Working Hands Radio.
I'm just a hard-working man, taking it day by day, doing everything I can, trying to chase my blues away. You need to clear your head and start acting like yourself. Get your head up off the table. Put that book back on the shelf.
And there you go. And that was Erie's own Ron Urose and the Vehicle, bringing us into yet another week of Working Hands Radio. Welcome, everybody. This is Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy, and once again, I'm flying solo tonight, which means I need you guys to chime in. It's Tuesday, July 17th, 2018, and Dateline is Erie, Pennsylvania. You're listening to the only show like it on planet Earth tonight. This isn't a podcast because we take live phone calls here, and you are the secret sauce if you're out there listening tonight. We don't do politics here, but if you work with your hands, if you build really cool things every day, well, then this is where you belong for the next hour. Because here at Working Hands Radio, we speak your language. It's your trade, your calls, your program. So, lots to talk about here. And in just a few moments, we'll open up the toll-free number for your phone calls, because without you, as I always say, we really don't have a program. You guys are the secret sauce. That's why we do this. So, of course, we've got our freebies to give away tonight. But before we get to that, as always, roll call. Now, we're doing something a little different tonight. You can be listening and watching this program tonight on both the Working Hands Radio page and the Tool and Die Guy page. So the technology is moving along. It's called cross-posting, and I think we've got that figured out. So as usual, roll call. If you're tuning in from anywhere in the country or the world, we'll take a moment and say hello to you guys. Just tell us your name and where you're listening from. That's one of the most exciting things about this program, is to connect to my blue-collar craftsmen from around the globe, and that's what makes this show really fun. So tonight's story is going to be the top story, millennials and manufacturing. Now, I kind of stepped in it last night, and I didn't mean to step in it, and because there was no harm meant. But you know what I did last night? I posted on the Tool and Die Guy page this statement: millennials, who has them in their shop, and what are your thoughts? Well, I'm going to read some of the comments, and that was never meant to degrade millennials, because I have 3 sons who are millennials. Okay, so I'm always kind of shocked where people go with these things, and I get it. Some people want to jump on the millennials, and I don't know why, because I was a young man once, and I wasn't perfect, and I needed to be groomed into the trade. And yeah, I had a pretty good work ethic, but I thought I did until I started working with top-rate tool makers, right? And they had to make me get with the program. Let's just put it that way. So, anyways, that comment, that post, which I just took down about 20 minutes ago, it served its purpose, and things were starting to degrade a little bit there. But about 6,000 people saw that post, and there was about 160 comments. Now, I really take this page, I'm very proud of the Tool and Die Guy page, because for the most part, the people who follow the Tool and Die Guy page are really polite, good guys and gals, right? Yeah, there's some rough comments once in a while, but for the most part, everybody behaves. But, of course, I guess we just have to find a few people that are enraged by something every day, and apparently this post last night about millennials, some people took it the wrong way, even though I was just curious of if you have millennials in your shop and what are your thoughts. So there was an attack, I guarantee you, on millennials. But by and large, most of the comments were very polite. But, I got to say, some of you youngins out there really have a problem with older folks. Kind of surprising, because like it or not, depending on what trade you're learning, the old guys, man, they can teach you a lot. But I get it. The trade's changing, and a lot of the stuff we had to learn back in the old days, I think I said this in last week's program, or I might even have it in my notes for tonight. A lot of the tricks we had to learn, you're probably not going to use a dividing head anymore or a turntable. And you needed somebody to show you that stuff. But not so much anymore with the CNCs, and I get that. But not a defense of the old guys, but I will say something here. I don't know where you got this experience with a lot of older folks are really slow and don't get their work done. Maybe you work at a union shop, because I could guarantee you that in a non-union shop, if you're slow and not getting your work done, you're out. All right, it's not going to last. So perhaps that's the issue. But anyways, if you're going to stick a finger in my eye, sometimes I'm going to pull it out and stick it right back in yours. So, let's get a grip here. So here's some comments, though. And you know what? There's some great comments. And I got a lot of comments from millennials. And this is Josh. And Josh, I'm 32, considered a millennial by definition. I'm one of the most respected people in the tool room I work in. I went to tech school, graduated at the top of my manufacturing class, worked in a job shop, programming and running prototrack lathes and mills, went on to work as an optical machinist out of high school, cutting sapphire windows worth as much as people's houses. Swiss World, he's been promoted to our tool room. He's having a great career. Then, another guy named Roger said, we've had several in our shop, but some of them have a problem getting off their phone, or they don't want to learn. Okay, fair enough. I don't think that's horrible. I'm a millennial. Let's see here. I think it's just like any other generation. Some people are, bad word, twats, and some are, bad word, and some stand out above the rest. People don't change. Times change. Technology changes. Good one. And let's see. I'm a millennial, lead toolmaker of a department, and transitioning into a design engineer. Perfect. This is Jim. I'm a millennial, along with 30 or so other millennials working in a tool and die shop. Been in 8 years, working towards starting my own shop, and good for you, Jim. That's how I did it. 8 years, I think, after I entered the trade. Let's see. I was in the trade about 10 years before I started my shop. Let's see here. Let's see. Got that one already. Let's see. I guess you could say I'm one. This is from Michael. Been working in the tool room 3 years. Came in with zero knowledge, and now I program and machine everything from 3D forms to punch blocks, shoes, parallels. Built 3 dies on my own. But I can also say you're not going to find another kid like me that's thirsty for knowledge. Well, Jim or Michael, they're probably out there. But hopefully encourage some of these guys to call in tonight. And this is Adam. He says, I'm a millennial, and I have yet to meet anyone with any skill that has, with skill that has made me go, wow, this guy is good. However, I've met some that I have a lot of potential to become that way. No one's teaching them anymore. No way to get the experience. And honestly, 30 years ago, even we thought the wage was less than it's worth according to economics. Excellent post. Let's see. Talking about the gap of knowledge in the trade. This guy, Sean, 24, team leader on a 7 mil 4 lathe non-union machine shop. I might not be the most experienced. My guys still respect me and my capabilities. So, see, lots of good news. This is Jesse about the millennials. He says, mine's still down in the basement, feeling entitled to everything we own. Again, that's not that bad, right? So anyways, and finally, I had to have one guy that, just had to go crazy. And, we're not going to dwell on that. But, here's the deal. I think we talked about this last week on the program. We talked about, he kind of came up in the tool room. There was this respect thing. And I grew up in that, and I've always fostered that in my apprentices. Not just that they respect me, but they respect the boss, and they respect everybody they work with. They respect their tools. Respect, right? Well, when you start dropping F-bombs at me here, that's done. You're toast. Okay, this is my page, and this isn't a public page. This is the Tool and Die Guy's page, and I'm the Tool and Die Guy. And again, I get it. I can handle difference of opinions and critiques, but when you drop F-bombs, it just makes you look bad. It makes you look stupid, right? Now, it's one thing to drop an F-bomb when you hit your finger with a hammer. Got it, okay? But when you literally take the time to type it, not so much. So, that being said, so I did a little research tonight, and let me just check the social media here. Anybody checking in tonight? Got to find the live video here and see if we've got any comments. Like I said, it's always good for you guys to Let me know who's on, and let's get the comments here. And again, if you're just joining me now, Brad White. Hey, Brad. Hey, Howard. It's our sometime guest host. Howie Herman's out there at a soccer game for his kids. Hi, David. Hi, Brian. Hi, Erica. We'll get to your comment in a minute. And again, if you're just joining us, check in. Where are you from? We love to hear from you. So I did some research. According, to last night was my first part of research when I decided to post it on Facebook. And again, just to find out what you guys had to say about it. And as I said earlier, I have 3 sons who are millennials. Okay, good guys. And first piece of information I found out that was called A Marriage of Millennials in Manufacturing. And this is at manufacturing.net. And we got to make sure the phone volume's off on that other phone. We don't want to hear me on another phone, right? All right. So manufacturing.net, The Marriage of Millennials in Manufacturing. And a couple highlights from it. It says here, manufacturing is undergoing a makeover. And amidst growing pressures from competitors mixed with other evolving technology, manufacturing is changing more than ever before. A recent survey shows 94.6% of manufacturers think positively of their company and believe they're headed for growth on all fronts. But while they seem to be headed for success, they must conquer the issue of a labor to make this growth. I think that's a misspelling. They need the labor to make the growth a reality, right? So a lot of issues here about what they kind of identify as a shrinking labor pool correlates to lost business opportunities. Now, we've talked about this before, right? And the old refrain would be, no kids are getting into manufacturing anymore, right? We've talked about that before. But there's different reasons for it that we've maybe never got into. So here's some of their issues in this study of what they call a lack of STEM education, STEM. That stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. The focus is increasingly shifting towards the humanities, and therefore schools are producing fewer graduates in the STEM fields because everybody wants to be a therapist, right? Lack of training programs, and we've addressed that several times on the program, and we've had guests from training programs. But vocational schools are considered an outdated educational trend. Once incredibly popular, chime in here if you went to a tech school. I did. Skill-based learning centers, apprenticeships, and on-the-job training programs are no longer as widespread as in previous years. This is a big one, and again, we've talked about this before. This might be the most serious one. The increasing age of the workforce. The individuals that make up the traditional manufacturing workforce, those that built the manufacturing industry after World War II, are retiring in increasing numbers. And finally, glad they talked about this, manufacturers' image problem. The manufacturing industry has a reputation of being dismal, boring, and outdated. Well, not to us if we're doing it, right? We love doing it, but sometimes, the kids, they're not quite getting how fun it could be. So today's millennial workers seek employment opportunities that excite them, and until manufacturing can change that image, it will remain unattractive to the next workforce, or to the new workforce. So that's an interesting article, and those are just some of the highlights of it. Of course, they said, out of all those issues, one thing we can't do anything about is the aging population, right? Those guys are going to retire, and they're gone. And my problem with that has always been, let's get that knowledge out there pretty quickly here, and here's they're employing technology, they say. Now, there's no easier way to attract the millennial workforce than by adopting and utilizing technology. Millennials grew up as digital natives. They are not only adept, but they take comfort in it, are attracted to companies that fully utilize technology. Implementing technology is the key to increasing interest in the manufacturing industry. So that's that article in a nutshell, and to which I would say technology is awesome, but technology is expensive, right? I get it if you're Boeing or Ford or GM, and you can invest a lot in robotics and bring these kids in and teach. That's exciting stuff. I agree. But for some of the guys with the smaller machine shops and that, there's only so far you're going to go with technology in some areas when you're only running 2 parts, right? You're not going to put a robot in to change 2 parts usually. So that's where I still think the issue may be. And as I've said on this program before, sometimes I think sometimes when we talk about manufacturing as a whole here, I think the government officials and politicians sometimes, when they think of manufacturing, they think of General Motors, they think of Ford, General Electric, Caterpillar. But they don't think of Joe's Machine Shop, and they don't think of all those little places down there that do a lot of that work for those big companies, right? Because Ford doesn't build all their own stuff, and neither does General Electric, and neither does General Motors. They rely on a tremendous little network of smaller shops to get a lot of specialty stuff done for them. And, that's where the issue comes in. It doesn't matter if you're General Electric or you're Phil Kerner, robotics or software, all that stuff costs a lot of money. So I've got another article, but let's see here. To continue on with that, as I said, I agree with that article. American manufacturing is at a crossroads. Again, I think the article said that kids nowadays, sometimes they look at manufacturing as it's a dirty, thankless job. And until you reach the upper ranks of the trade, and then the pay is there. But it can be a little tough starting out, right? And the CNC machines have taken a lot of the stuff away that we had to learn back in those good old days. And but once you've run those manual machines, though, the CNC machines, I always say it's like cheating, right? I mean, they take care of a lot of issues. I watched a special on TV just a few weeks ago, and they did a whole thing on the Mini Cooper plant in England. Pretty phenomenal special. I can't remember where I found this. That was really good. But they have an apprenticeship there in this amazingly technologically advanced facility where they literally teach apprentices how to file first. They literally take a hand file and have to file to a line. And that's, again, this is one of the most technologically sophisticated plants on the planet. So, we talked about these apprenticeships on last week's program, and the reality is manufacturers being at a crossroads, there's nothing wrong with learning things the old way. It's just not going to cut it anymore, right? Somebody did point out that some of the millennials are approaching 40, but most aren't. Generation X kids are still pretty young, so we didn't mean to throw you in that thing. I'm a baby boomer, so there, you can call me that, right? So we were never meant here to malign a new generation, because every generation seems to do it. I mean, I remember my father wasn't really happy with my older sisters playing the crummy Beatles in the house. The Beatles. Yes, the Beatles. But we're missing a little bit of a vital part of the process here, and that is the passing on of information. So let's spell that out. You can go to any college and get a great degree, but someone is going to have to mentor you once you come to a company. There's no way to teach a kid in college everything they need to know about working in manufacturing, right? You're going to go get an awesome degree, and you're going to be good at math and design software and maybe some modeling and some machining, but every shop is different. Different CAD systems, different CAM systems, different types of work, precision injection molds, or aircraft parts, or trains, or tractors. And that's where the cross-training comes in from the other generation, right? I always say there's a reason medical students, they still do an internship before they can graduate. The same can be said about manufacturing. There is so much to learn. The CNC machining, 3D machining, assemblies, weldments, different types of material, ISO requirements, quality control, just the shop environment in a new place to get used to how they get a product out the door. Then, of course, there's the tooling, which is different on every job, carbide, end mills, coated end mills, drills. Every day can be an adventure. So the reality from here is that as much as I love the smell of cutting oil and getting my hands dirty, we're moving away from that in some ways. So I guess the trick here is you got to show a millennial how to use that technology that they've grown up with, and then the lights will eventually come on. And they won't have a problem with getting some cutting oil on their hands, right? So if you're listening to this program, then you already know it's in it's in your DNA. You like to build stuff from scratch, but it all comes down to sales. I always say, you sold your wife on the fact you'd be a good husband, and that's why she married you. And you sold the company that you work for on the fact that you'd be a great hire, or you probably wouldn't be working there. And I still say manufacturers need to sell millennials on the trade and show them how to do it. So let's open the phone lines. Where am I going wrong here? And let's see here. We want to make sure we get this straight here. And there we are. Good evening, everybody. It's Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy, broadcasting from the historic studio here in Erie, Pennsylvania. Let me check in with the social media here. Hi, Tom, and hi, David. David, Tom, Erica Rodriguez. She has a thing. Erica's a regular listener here. She's about the millennials, I think. My problem is the older generation assuming that we millennials have no idea or experience of what you've had to work with. I knew how to operate your velvet indicator, Phil. Well, it wasn't a velvet indicator. It was an Alina indicator, Erica. But yes, and you did. I never said you couldn't. I just thought I'd show you so we didn't damage it in the process of calibrating it today. And, if you already knew how to use it, then just tell me that. So let's move along. Who's up for a phone call tonight? I think they'll give the first phone caller a pretty cool hat here. 800-870-1648. Again, there was a lot of people on this feed last night. 6,000 people were really chatting away about the millennials. And again, I always say this is not a podcast. So give us a call. 800-870-1648. Let's see, here what do I have for you tonight? I've got this very cool, very soft navy blue industrial sales and manufacturing hat. And the first caller tonight gets this. It'll go out in the mail tomorrow to anywhere in the United States, and we've sent these all over the United States. So industrial sales and manufacturing here in Erie, one of our sponsors, they get their stuff out there around the United States, which is kind of cool. So back to the phones and back to the material at hand tonight. I know you guys have feelings about this stuff, and give them a drill bit to sharpen. Step one. Danny Watson, hello. YouTube works great for learning. I'll say something about learning on YouTube. Who's teaching you? That's always my question. Don't want to say anyone's doing anything wrong on YouTube, but and I've used YouTube. I mean, really, I don't use it for my own trade usually, not because I know everything. I usually have, by this time in my career, a pretty good library of guys I personally know that if I have a question about something, they're right at work, I can go to. I don't think I've ever looked something up on YouTube other than to watch a cool new machine run or something. I usually don't do that. But, you got to make sure the person who's teaching you is qualified to do it, right? My opinion, certified, knows what they're doing. I mean, I think you learn more that way. I've always been very clear with my lessons that, I'm certified by the state of Pennsylvania. I'm a journeyman tool and die maker. Went through my 4-year apprenticeship, 8,000 hours, all the night school. And I got a really good apprenticeship. So, again, I don't know about learning a trade on YouTube. I think it's interesting to go around and maybe you can learn a few things. But I would not, I personally, if I really wanted to learn to be better at auto mechanics, you know what I'd do? I'd find an auto mechanic that would let me work at their place for a couple of weeks. And then I'd learn something about auto mechanics, or depending on what I want to do. Engine building, that's what I tend to do. I find like that guy that I think is the best and really grab onto them. But I get it. YouTube is the bomb, and it's free. So I get that too. So what do you guys think tonight? It's about 7:22 or 7:23 now. And again, had a lot of interest in this topic last night. And if you're just joining us, this is Working Hands Radio. I'm Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy. And what we're talking about tonight are the millennials. And how do we get them interested in manufacturing? And we just brought in a young man at Industrial Sales here. And he's takes care of we're getting some robotics out in the shop. And, he's a tremendous young guy. He actually served in Iraq. And he's not that old. I think he's only 24. And he came back and used the GI Bill, went back and got 2 degrees. And now he's, the robotics really interested him. So once he got into that, now he has a job doing it. And, again, it's fun to watch him out there, with his iPad and positioning the robot and memorizing the steps. And those guys, they think that way, right? It's funny when the technology came out for me. I remember when my kids were first getting into Mario Brothers, right? What was the late 80s? Pre-internet days. But they love that stuff, But even the younger guys now, my kids are all in their late 20s, early 30s, and I think the next generation behind them is even they grew up with iPhones. And I've watched my niece who's 8. She knows exactly what to do with an iPhone. I won't let her touch mine because sometimes she gets a hold of the Queen's, and I don't know what she did to it. So I have to try and fix it. So, but we use the iPhone here too much for business, so I keep that out of CZ's hands there. But so let's take a quick break here, and let's come back and open up the phone lines and hear what you guys have to say. I know everybody likes to comment here, but the phone lines are the way to go. And hello, Marshall from Houston, Texas. Remember Kohler's micrometer set? Right. That was a good one. Yeah, we had a set of proto micrometers that came in through the Family Legacy Project. We talked about that last week. And nobody could figure out how to adjust them. And quite frankly, I don't remember off the top of my head. There was a little trick. And the girl who's commenting under here, Eric, she works with me in the QC department, and she does all of our, or most of our calibration work that we do inside the plant. Some we send out, but we had this. After I donated these things to this young man at work, they had to go through the shop calibration process, and they were a little off, and it was a little weird how these things got adjusted. There was no seemingly easy place to do it, and once we figured it out, or Erica did, she's telling me on YouTube. So that's right, and you can, again, learn tricks on YouTube. I don't know if you can learn a trade. Just my feeling, okay? So we'll be back in just a minute.
Hi, folks. This is Phil Kerner for Working Hands Radio. Let's face it, the last 10 years or so has been one tough ride for American manufacturing. Well, this sponsor of Working Hands Radio has managed to not only get through the last 10 years, but just celebrated their 50th year in business in 2017. Folks, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have to tell you, I've never seen a shop that jumps through more hoops to keep their customers satisfied than Industrial Sales and Manufacturing right here in Erie, Pennsylvania. With over $30 million in equipment on the shop floor, no job is too simple, no job is too complex for ISM. CNC milling and turning, robotic welding, laser cutting, plasma burning, assembly, and powder coating are all done under one roof, which gives ISM a big edge over many companies that might have to subcontract many of those operations out and lose control of the process. Industrial Sales and Manufacturing deals with some of the most demanding customers in the world and strives for continuous improvement on a daily basis. Built in Erie, found around the world. Give them a shot. ISMErie.com.
Hi, it's your host, Phil Kerner, the Tool and Die Guy. Are you new in the trade? Are you an apprentice? A hobbyist? Or maybe you just like to watch other people work? You can learn a lot that way. If you'd like to see how things really get done in the real world of manufacturing, I'd invite you to check out thetoolanddieguy.com, where I just posted lesson number 342. From shop math to calibration, cutter grinding, precision grinding, EDM, AutoCAD, and setups, because I believe setups are the biggest time robber in any shop. It's a very cool package from my 40 plus years in manufacturing. And tonight, for you guys that are listening to Working Hands Radio, there's $20 off, so it's less than 25 cents a lesson. So please check it out, thetoolanddieguy.com. All right, we are back. This is Phil Kerner, Working Hands Radio tonight. How's everybody's summer going so far? It has been quite hot here in Erie, Pennsylvania, and if you're lucky enough to work in air conditioning, good for you. And we have several air conditioning units here. They're getting kind of old at the shop, and they're trying to repair them as we move along. I remember years ago, I used to work right up the street from the company I work at now, and I remember it was a Carlisle Engineered Products used to own that building, and they were a big deal in the automotive business. So they had a lot of money at Carlisle. And what do you do when you have a lot of money and you need to put air conditioners on your roof? You bring a helicopter in. And I remember I watched those guys that day choppering in these giant air conditioning units that are still up on our roof. That's probably about, 25, 30 years ago now. That was back in the 80s. Yeah, 30 years ago. Wow. So that's why some of the air conditioners at ISM They slowly are needing repairs, and they move around the shop. They try to keep up with them. But boy, you know, when the humidity gets to a point, it's just a wet towel some days. But 3 months of it, we'll live, right? Because we can get some pretty severe winters here. So we'll take the hot days. We're good with that. In fact, a couple days ago was July 15th. And, you know, for me, July 15th is the middle of the summer. I consider in Erie, Pennsylvania, June 1st to August 31st, that's our summer. Because we go right into fall pretty quickly in September, and which I love fall. It's probably my favorite season because the temperatures are great. You got the sky is beautiful, the leaves. It's a nice place to be in the fall. Northeast is always beautiful in the fall. So I guess let's move along with a little bit of the millennial stuff I had for tonight. I did have another article, again, attracting millennials to the workforce, and curious of what you guys think about that. And of course, to make sure you guys know, we do have our phone line here. Let's make sure if I don't put up the phone number, then people don't know what it is. So that's the phone number, 800-870-1648. And we'd love to hear from you tonight and with your opinion on the millennials in the workforce. And maybe you're a millennial. Call in. Come on. You know, I mean, you guys are the future. And based on these comments I got the last few days on, or last 24 hours actually on Facebook, a lot of passionate young people out there in manufacturing doing very well at it, and love to hear from you guys. And it's very hard for me sometimes to keep up with everything that's going on at the studio and check in on the social media also. Let's see here. Houston, Texas. I think we're kind of caught up on the social media. So, again, if you're just joining in tonight, please check in. That's one of our traditions here. Tell us where you're listening from, and your name should come up automatically, but where you're listening from. So the topic tonight is millennials in the workplace. And we're not here to bash millennials at all. God forbid, right? Maybe we'd have more fun if I did a topic on old guys in the workplace, right? And I could tell you some stories about those guys too. Those guys, like I'm not one of those guys, but you know, as I said before, the way manufacturing is now, I don't know. I don't know how many people are putting up with people who are slow. I mean, I get it. You know, the guy's 64 and a half. You're not going to give him a Viking funeral at the back door of the shop. but you know, if a guy can't do the work anymore of the competition we have now, you know, I've said this before in the program. My biggest concern years ago is the tool and die trade started to be exported to the Pacific Rim, and I could tell kids weren't getting into the trade anymore, and there's a reason for that too. Besides the things I mentioned earlier, this next article I was going to talk a little bit about, but the 3Ds of manufacturing: dark, dirty, and dangerous, right? And again, you know, there's kids out there that it's just different now too, right? My generation grew up with these because I turned 16 in 1976, so you know, you're just a kid. So what do you buy? 10-year-old cars, which are 66, 65, 63 Chevys, and you tuned them up yourself. You did a lot of work yourself, and it was pretty easy to do, but you learned a lot doing it. And the reality is, cars today aren't quite that way anymore, right? I mean, you lift up the hood, and it's hard to even find, you know, the dipstick to check the oil. I mean, seriously, you got to look. They like color coded them yellow so they stand out. There's so much electronics and so much carburation, and there's a lot going on in the engine. And the average kid is not going to open up the hood of his car and do a tune-up. And let's face it, you know, you can go 100,000 miles without a tune-up anymore. So, you know, back to the 3Ds of manufacturing. They not only think that it's dirty, dangerous, and what did I say here? Dark, dirty, and dangerous, but it's not safe. And I mean, it's not safe as far as employment goes. And there's a big part of the sales job of manufacturing, in my opinion. My opinion is that I get it. I mean, as I said earlier, Boeing, General Electric, Caterpillar, these big companies, you know, they've got the money. They're global competitors, but they're relying on the young people coming out of college with degrees in these technical fields I guess I don't get who's putting the stuff together, right? Because eventually, for a lot of this stuff, you need dies built, you need molds built, and somebody's got to build them. As far as I know, you still can't show a blueprint to a machine, and the machine just builds it, right? There's a lot that goes into that stuff. And that is, I guess, where my concern is that the die makers and the mold makers, that's where the gap's going to happen. That's been my prediction for 15 years now. China builds a lot of molds for the United States, and that's fine, and that's just the way it is. So why would a kid, learn a trade and spend 4 years learning a great trade, not knowing if he's really going to have a career? And that's the question. So, that's why I always rely a lot on you guys to fill in the blanks here and let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods, because I know what's going on in our neck of the woods. We've got a couple tool and die shops they're okay. I think maybe one or two are doing pretty good, but as far as the 100 that used to be all cranking away, those days are gone, right? And if you're a kid and you watched your brother or your father, lose their shop or lose their job at a really great tool shop, that's something you really want to do. So it's up to the movers and shakers in manufacturing, and perhaps if you are one, chime in here. But that's my job, and as we grow here, I need to get a few guests on here to talk about the good spots in manufacturing, the careers, not the jobs. Anybody can get a job, but it's another thing to have a career, and especially as a young person. You're in your 20s and you're just getting started in life, and maybe you're just working a job because you're in college right now and just need to make a couple bucks. Then just get a job. That's all you need right now. You need something easy, simple, brainless that you can just put some money away and get back to college and finish that. But when you get out of college, or you're God forbid, these days you don't go to college and you're looking for a career, what's it going to be? I mean, what's a solid career? And manufacturing used to fill that gap for the people who didn't want to go to school or just felt like they were ready to go into the workforce. So let me check the social media guys again. What's going on here? Let's see here. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hi, Trent. Hi, Brian in Bedford. Star Prairie, Wisconsin. Awesome. Hi, Frank. And I think David's talking about molds here. They can build them, but we need to fix them. I don't know how bad Chinese molds are. Hey, I got to ask you, David, why don't you give me a call here? Call the 800 number. It sounds like you like to chime in here a little bit. You'll get a wonderful hat for calling in. Plus, I'm curious, are the Chinese molds still that bad that you have to tune them up that much? I would think by now, after 15 years of kind of owning that market, they'd be pretty good at building injection molds, but maybe that's not the case, because that was the case originally. You knew you got them for nothing, but you knew you were going to bring them back, and they weren't going to run right. But you got them for so cheap, it was cheaper to just to put the time in. And again, as I've said on this show before, that the dirty little secret here is, if I'm a manufacturer and I have a mold built in China that would have cost me $50,000 in the States, but I get it built for $7,000 in China, and it gets here and it's not right, and I have to put $20,000 into it to make it right, I'm still way ahead, and I get to write the $20,000 off as a repair job. So that doesn't help us either, right? So again, like I said, hey Jonathan, millennial here from Dayton, Ohio, and 13. Let's see, age 33, 13 years in the trade. Awesome, Jonathan. I hope I don't know how long you've been tuning in tonight. We did a nice spot on the millennials to open the program. So what I want to make clear here also is this whole thing about the millennials that I brought up last night was to engage them. And like I said, we got a lot of engagement on Facebook yesterday. And, it's always hard to get people to remember the program's on, or when they're on, to get them to call in. But that's why we're here, to take that phone call to discuss this stuff, because it's just not the same when you're posting about it. I get it. A lot of people don't want to call in. Usually once one person calls in and they realize that I'm not mean to them, or that you can't be seen, because just because you can see me doesn't mean we'll see you. And nobody will even know your last name. We just ask you to say your first name and where you're calling from, and tell us what's on your mind. You know, that's the most fun about the program. So this article is from Industry Week, and what it's called is "Will Millennials Change Manufacturing?" And they talk about, as I said, the 3 Ds of manufacturing: dark, dirty, and dangerous. And it says it's the human resources HR managers shudder. It's the image they don't want the public or millennials considering careers in manufacturing to have of the industry. They want to be able to talk about an industry that is attractive, safe, innovative, and even cool. Now, obviously, I don't sit here and read the whole article to you guys. I just highlight some things. The millennials, this generation now makes up the largest in the United States, 83.1 million of them, according to the U.S. Census, versus 75.4 baby boomers like me. Now, I'm at the end of that cycle. I think the baby boomers were 46 to 60, 45 to 60, 1945, 1960, right after World War II. And I'm at the end of that cycle. But let's see here. So, as baby boomers leave the workforce and millennials make up a more significant part of it, many manufacturers believe that this generation will change manufacturing. Well, that's obvious. They're going to have to. That's not going to be the same. But their ability is to transform an organization's slow processes into fast, effective business success will help manufacturing supply chain growth for years to come. And I agree with that. Again, watching our robot guy, just the simple things he's doing with the tablet, pretty cool. So, let's see here. Many manufacturers, even in successful growing companies, clearly worry that millennials will not be attracted to manufacturing. Some 84% of executives agree that there's a talent shortage in the U.S. in manufacturing, according to a survey of the Manufacturing Institute and don't know what that word is, Deloitte. The skills gap facing manufacturing could mean as many as 2 billion jobs will go unfulfilled in the coming decade. And there you go. Back to the theme here, right? I mean, we keep talking about this over and over again. And I guess, as I always say, what's the solution? Now, if I've got a few millennials out there, I mean, I'm trying to keep track of the comments here, guys, but if you're a millennial and you would like to get into manufacturing, or you're already in it, what attracted you? What made you go into it? Was it your father? Was it a recruiter at high school? Is there something that made you want to do something cool, like work in a shop or work in a engineering department? That's a really great way to move in. And then, but once you work on the shop floor, and then you go into an engineering part of the program, everything changes then, right? Everything changes because now you actually know what the other side knows, right? You can put stuff together. You can build stuff. You know what a mill is and a lathe is, and you can read precision instruments. And after a couple of years in the shop floor, are you an expert? No, but you've got a great exposure to what's going on out there, right? Pretty much, truth be known, I mean, a lot of the time spent learning a trade is just getting better at it, right? I mean, you start learning a trade, and then you're learning the lathe and the mill and all the stuff that comes with that. And then a lot of your time to move up the ladder is getting really proficient at it. All right, so with that being said, we have a call tonight, so let's see what's going on here. Go ahead, caller. This is Phil Kerner. You're in... Oh, did we lose him? Well, please call back. Not sure what happened there. Don't think we did anything wrong here. Looked like you were there, so try again. We'll take the phone call. So again, a lot of things you had to do to just get the basics will serve you well when you go into an engineering part of the shop. And I think it's always a really cool thing when we bring a kid in. Right now we've got a kid in from a local university, great kid, and he's going through the ranks at the shop, and he wants to. That's the best part. They hired him. Again, he's an intern, and he's doing some computer work and doing some I would call it bookkeeping. It's just making sure some of our records are in order for some of our setup sheets, and he actually asked to go on the shop floor. and he wanted to experience that part of the trade. And I told him how much better this will make him when he goes back to school now in the fall. He will have an understanding of engineering that nobody else in the class will have. Let's try this one more time. Hello, you're on Working Hands Radio. Somehow we're dropping the calls here. And maybe it's me. All right, third time's a charm, caller. He wants that hat. If you want the hat, do it again. Not sure what the deal is. Everything's working fine here, guarantee you. So, anyways, if you are out there and thinking about you're a young man or a young lady, and you're in school right now, and you get on that internship, talk to those managers in the summer and get out there on that shop floor and learn. This kid's actually spent a couple weeks in the shipping department at our company, and he did a great job, and he learned so much about how we ship parts. And there's a whole deal with that, right? I mean, we're not shipping little, sometimes we ship little things, but we ship these giant weldments and things around the United States. All right, please, let's make sure this works tonight. You're on Working Hands Radio.
Hi, Phil.
Hey, who's this?
This is Chris. I'm from Southerton, PA.
Okay, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I just tried to call a few times, and I guess the third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm, 'cause you wanted that hat.
Yeah. Millennials.
Yes.
Well, that's a great subject. I work for a medical company, and we got about 50 people in the shop, and so we've got we've had a lot of the young kids that we've had a hard time showing up to work 5 days a week in a row, and we've had a lot of problems in that area just trying to keep kids from, trying to keep them employed. They don't. It seems like a lot of them don't want to work, but we also have a few of them that have turned out to be quite well. We got one guy that he graduated from Penn State with a physical therapy degree, and now he's working. He's running his own department now. He wants it. He's building a career, and he's a go-getter. So I've seen all points in between. And you said something earlier in the program where you said that the times change, the technology changed, but people don't change. And I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, do you think sometimes...
Still there?
Yeah, do you think sometimes the millennials get a bad rap, though? I mean, let's face it. I don't know how old you are, but when I was coming up in the trade... of course, most of the kids that were getting into the trade were ambitious and wanted to get into the trade. I wouldn't say they were all perfect, but for whatever reason, the work ethic was kind of built in back then. And I'm not saying all millennials have a bad work ethic. I do not want to get into that thing at all. But there does seem to be, and again, reading what I've read about this program tonight, trying to do some research, they're not motivated in the same way I think my generation is. We grew up wanting a house and a car and a wife and family at a fairly young age, and we were willing to do what it took to get there very soon. And I don't think that's their motivation now. In fact, a lot of the stuff I read today, they like flexible work hours. There's a different value they place. I don't know if it's what do I want to say? Motivated by money as much. I think they might be more motivated by lifestyle and things like that. I'm not saying that's bad, but it does represent, I guess, a little bit of a challenge for some people to realize that this generation can be a bit different. Now, again, if you heard me from the beginning, I got a lot of great kids that chimed in last night on that Facebook post about they're go-getters. They're doing great in manufacturing. So I don't know. It seems to be a little weird. I'm not thinking a lot of millennials. The issue is I don't think a lot of them want to get into manufacturing. Would that be fair?
I think it's fair. I'm 51, so one thing I think you can probably sympathize with me on this. I got my first job in a shop when I was 16 years old. And I remember coming back from lunch one day on a Saturday, and I was running a lathe, and for some reason I decided to pull up a stool and sit down at the lathe. And
I can see how this is going to end.
okay, you know how this is going to turn out. The the owner of the shop was he was a die maker who came up, in the Depression, and he didn't take a lot of crap off of anybody. And he pretty much, I'm not going to repeat exactly what he said to me, but 35 years later, you'll never see me sitting in a shop. So, you try to do that. You try to talk to the kids like that today, and they look at you like you're, the respect factor isn't there.
Well, we talked about that earlier, and I don't even know.
Yes, you did.
I don't even know if that's a millennial thing. I just don't know if it's just a whole different way of people being brought up now. It's just, I mean, like I said, the comments, like I got 160 comments last night on that post, and 158 of them were awesome, and 2 of them were absolutely horrible, right? And and I don't, that's a pretty good ratio, and I'm very proud of the fact that I keep the Tool and Die Guy page pretty clean that way. But there's other pages out there that are really nasty, and I just don't do it. But it makes me worry about the trade in general when young people jump on me as this. I'm a fog. You've heard that before, FOG, right?
Mm-hmm.
And an effing old guy. And where did that come from?
Right.
I mean, really? I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. But I guess that's their way of being funny. I don't know. But the whole conversation tonight didn't quite go the way I was kind of hoping it would tonight. I was hoping to tell some stories tonight. I did read their comments about some success stories, and but I think it's just a whole different way of thinking now, as kids are being much more programmed to stay away from manufacturing and go into college, and again, as I said earlier, sometimes we deserve it. We didn't defend our manufacturing businesses. We let the government sell our work overseas, and we kind of wrecked the whole trade here, and and stood there with our mouths open. And now you're wondering why kids don't want to do this anymore. I mean, really?
Yeah. I think there are some bright spots, though. I mean, I've been following your page for a while. There's another guy on the end. I'm sure you probably heard of Titan. The Titans of CNC.
No, I've heard that. You're right. I've heard of him. Yep.
Yeah, but my point is, there are people out there that are bringing the attention to manufacturing. There's some glimmers out there. There's some. I remember, 12 years ago, I went to work for a small custom molder, just repairing injection molds, and I remember talking with a lot of guys, who lost their shops because of the Chinese competition, and everybody was concerned that there wasn't going to be any more die and molds being built. Obviously, there, like you said earlier, there's still a lot of stuff made in China, but it's not dead yet. And I like to think that it's not going to die, and I hope it doesn't.
Well, my biggest concern is always, if it does come back, I don't know who's going to build it in 5 years.
Yeah. I've been saying for years, if we God forbid, if we ever go to war with China, we can't get them to make our bullets.
Or our canopies for our F-14s or whatever. God only knows what they're making for us. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you chiming in tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to call in. It really means a lot that you would do that. It makes the show a lot more fun for everybody when you call in.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate what you're doing.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right, so we're going to kind of start winding down a few programming notes here, and I want to make sure we cover this. I always make sure every week just to tell you a little bit about our advertisers, and I did the ISM commercial tonight. Industrial Sales and Manufacturing here in Erie, Pennsylvania. ISMErie.com. Check those guys out. ISO 9002 company, do a lot of great things there. Anybody can buy a machine, do CNC machining, but a lot of CNC machines. We got the robotic welding, plasma cutting, laser cutting, pretty good stuff there. And of course, we do assembly and powder coating too, all under one roof. So if you know anybody that's looking to get a project done, give them a shot. ISMErie.com. And I always want to make sure you guys are aware of the fact, most manufacturers don't get advertising, right? They don't advertise. I mean, they're not going to, unless they need help wanted, right? So what we do here is we're kind of self-funded here, but we really do appreciate you guys jumping in here. And it's not as much as advertising. It's more like patronage, support. So if you're out there and you have a small shop, or maybe you know somebody is, and they'd like to get their name out there now, what are you going to get for this? It's a great package, right? Besides Working Hands Radio, which is on every Tuesday night, don't forget, this stays on the internet forever until Facebook goes out of business, right? And so the videos stay up there forever. So if you got a promo on here, that's going to be there forever. And then the second thing that's going to happen here is I can turn you into a sponsor of the Tool and Die Guy page. And I routinely reach about 25 to 30,000 people a month with my posts. Believe it or not, 6,000 to 7,000 a week. So we can put that all together for you for a very, very reasonable price. Shockingly reasonable price. So please let me know if you'd be interested in that. I want to make sure I take just a minute to put that up there. There is a link for you to go to, and that would be it right there, thetoolanddieguy.com, and that's support Working Hands Radio. And if maybe you don't own a shop and you're like the program, jump in there. You can do a small donation. Many hands make light work, and we appreciate the goodwill. So, winding down here, another Tuesday night here in beautiful Erie, Pennsylvania. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. It was really interesting to talk about the millennials, and maybe we'll continue this conversation if we can get some of them to call in. Just remember, we're here to tell your stories. And then we'll learn more about Working Hands Radio. Just visit thetoolanddieguy.com, and there's a button there, Working Hands Radio, and you can see the previous 17 programs, or download the audio so you can take me with you anywhere, anytime. And again, thank you to the sponsors. I'd like to send a special shout out to John Shirk. We gave you a nice donation this week. Indicare Precision Gauge Repair, great guy, friend of the program. John, thank you for that contribution. So we do produce this program ourselves for the love of working with your hands, because building stuff with your hands is cool. Well, I'm kind of ending the night here, but I do have a phone call, and I own the studio. Let's see if we got somebody fun. Hi, this is Working Hands Radio. You're on the air. Hello?
Hi, Phil. How's it going?
This voice sounds familiar.
Yeah, it should, right?
Yes, sir.
I'd chime in on the last minute here for a minute or two.
Okay. Go ahead.
Give my thoughts.
Not a problem.
So, I'm 26, so I'm kind of the prime millennial, as you would say. And I think one of the biggest problems is with people my age in the trade is kind of the mindset. Nowadays, the gold standard for people my age is to go to high school, go to college, get a 4-year degree, get a desk job. And I think for a lot of kids, manufacturing and skilled trades is kind of like, this is what I have to do. I wasn't good enough for college. I wasn't good enough to get a degree. So I think a lot of kids are kind of like, I'm just going to show up and do what I have to do and then leave, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, it's a job.
It seems like people my age really don't have a lot of pride in it because they feel inferior, as to say, which they shouldn't, but I think in today's society, that's kind of how they feel.
Well, there's a certain way you carry yourself, right? If you're building a career and you're good at what you do, especially if you're doing precision work, you should be proud of that work. There's a special individual.
Yep, exactly.
It's a special type of person that knows how to set up and check their own work, consistently get it done on time, very few mistakes, has the work ethic to go with it. You should be very proud of that. But as we both know, it doesn't happen overnight, like anything, right? You got to make your mistakes.
Exactly.
You got to put your time in, and you got to work for low wages to start with. But boy, once you get those papers and you're a real tool and die maker or a mold maker, there's nothing else like it. There's nothing else like it.
Exactly.
And there's a respect level there.
Yeah.
To this day, when I tell people I'm a tool and die maker, they're like, "Oh, that's cool." They get it. That name still means something. Maybe it doesn't in other places, but when you tell people you're a tool and die maker, now I think I've been in California before. And I told somebody I was a tool and die maker. They didn't know what I did. Right? They didn't get that.
Yep.
But
Exactly.
All right, Mr. Brad.
Yeah, but I think
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think kind of what you said is kind of the problem as well. Is you have to start working at a very low wage, which is what I did. But I think that also kind of pushes people away, rightfully so. You see a lot of people, putting ads out on Indeed and all these job sites, and they're only offering, 11, 12, 13 bucks an hour, which I guess if you don't have skills and you're getting your foot in the door, that's okay, but that's not going to lure younger kids in like me.
Well,
I think
you're looking for especially if you're serious, if you want a career and an opportunity. Yeah, if you're just going to change, you don't want to change parts all day.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, again,
so I think it's kind of a two-way street as far as getting younger people in the trade. A lot of kids don't have the drive to do it, and I also think employers don't want to pay decent money to get a young person in the door. But
well, and again,
Yep.
that's again. My job here is to get that conversation put together. And if the employers are out there, and they would tune in and say, "I'm not paying a guy $16 an hour to start." Well, then what is the end game for that guy? You're just going to start him at 12 and kill him the rest of his life until he gets a quarter a year or whatever,
Yep.
or or are you trying to give these guys meaningful careers, or what's the end game with these guys? And
Exactly.
and that's my job here to get. So we're going to get some more people on here via interviews and getting the right people in place here to talk to about their experience in the trade as far as hiring and firing, and then maybe get some people involved that are bigger in this industry and have some statistics. And I think the statistics, quite frankly, are horrible for getting kids into manufacturing right now. I think they are, and but I don't know what they're going to do about it. I don't know. I think a lot of people are paying lip service to it. They're saying it sounds like a great idea. They say we need to get more kids involved. Then what are you doing? That's the question.
Right.
If you're a manufacturer, don't whine about it. What are you doing about it? You're doing job fairs. Are you going out to the high schools? Are you bringing the kids in to look at stuff? Are you getting them excited about it? I mean, there's kids out there that are still bent that way. They're mechanically inclined, but they're not getting excited about it, and that's our job to sell them on it, right?
Yep, exactly. And like I said, when I straight out of high school, I knew college wasn't for me because I was in a band and I wanted to do other things. But in the meantime, I needed to kind of get a job going to make some money. And I started at my dad's best friend's dye shop. I started for like $12 an hour, and I suffered for years. Working overtime
Right.
and.
But the overtime,
60 hours a week.
But the overtime made up for the
60
$12, right? The overtime made up for the overtime made up for the $12 an hour.
Right.
And you were young enough to do it.
Exactly. Well, I'd work 55 hours a week, and it was kind of disheartening actually because I'd work 55 hours a week and I'd walk away with 450 bucks, and that's pretty disheartening if you think about it. Now I'm 26 and making close to $30 an hour.
Right.
And I'm on cloud nine. I love my job. I have enough to support my family, but I think the fact that, people see what the starting wage is, that's very, very, very disheartening for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, I don't know if that makes sense to you or not.
It makes total sense. Well, I appreciate the call. appreciate you calling in every week, or not every week, every once in a while, Brad. It's good to hear from you.
Yep, definitely.
All right. Have
Thank
a good
you.
night.
Yep, you too, Phil.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yep.
It's always interesting. This happens sometimes. I think some guys are getting out of work now at different parts of the country, and they call in. So if you're still out there and you want to call in, I guess I should put that back up there. Let's see here. There you go. So we're here for a couple more minutes, just closing down shop here in Erie, Pennsylvania. So it was fun tonight, talking about the millennials, and not in a bad way at all. But when we say that, I think what we mean is the younger kids. How would you get them in the trade? And for the most part, all the millennials I've dealt with, they're very positive, and a lot of the people who commented on Facebook last night were very positive. So just to finish up tonight, again, I was in the middle of this closing, so we won't do the whole thing. Just remember, if you're interested, this is Working Hands Radio, but I'm also the Tool and Die Guy. There's 342 lessons over now there at thetoolandieguy.com. Check that out. There's a special going on tonight for our listeners. We'll be here next week, 7 p.m. So thanks for tuning in. And tonight we changed up the closing statement. And I've done this one before, but this is a good one. Now, this used to be taped to the back door at Anson Tools and Gauges, and I had this run into it every day when I left the shop. If you work for a man, in heaven's name, work for him. If he pays you wages that supply you your bread and butter, work for him. Speak well of him. Think well of him. Stand by him, and stand by the institution he represents. I think if I worked for a man, I would work for him. I would not work for him part of the time, and the rest of the time would work against him. No, I would give him an undivided service or none. If put to one pinch, an ounce of loyalty is worth a pound of cleverness. So that's it. This is Working Hands Radio. Again, I'm Phil Kerner. Thanks for tuning in. This program will be recorded and put up on Facebook. We're simulcasting on both the Tool and Die Guy and Facebook Live. It's it's summer and people have other things to do. We get that, but I'm sure we'll get some more comments as we move along. But thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the recording. If you couldn't see this live, we'll see you next Tuesday night. We'll end with some toolboxes from people sent in their work areas. This is kind of cool. See you next week.